All right, we're going to pick up here, continue talking about, we talked about decision-making approaches and decision-making as a whole. And one of the things we mentioned in the last video is that 50% of all decisions are erroneous, which is kind of scary because we make a lot of decisions in our life, but scary to think that 50% of them are wrong. And so as we talked about, we're coming up with strategies to try to help minimize that so that we are a little bit better than that 50%. And so what we're going to look at today is the reading I had refers to this as decision-making styles, but I look at more as approaches to decision-making. Again, semantics. But a couple things to keep in mind here. Some different ways of handling it, decision-making. One is reflexive. And reflexive basically relies on reflexes. So we want to come up with, we hear a situation and we react. And we rely on our reflexes. And so a lot of times this is referred to as the shoot from the hip approach. We make those snap decisions. The good thing about them is they're decisive. There's no procrastination. This person makes that decision, and once they make it, they go all in, and they are very decisive about it, which is great because it doesn't take much time. The bad thing is they have a tendency to make poor decisions because they make those decisions without information. They don't get all the facts. They kind of rely on their gut instinct to make the decision, and while that can be good at times, it can also be bad. And these leaders have a tendency, or these people that make these types of decisions have a tendency to stumble because they don't get all the facts. Okay? And they make those hasty decisions without all the information. And good side of it, very decisive, very quick. The bad side is make a lot of bad decisions that way, and relying on that gut feeling. Reflective is kind of the other side of the coin, and that means that they're going to take their time. They're going to think through it. Spend time reflecting on the situation and trying to come up with solutions. And they gather as much information as they can, and a lot of times it may be too much information. They just get so much information, they get bogged down in the information. They're analyzing too many alternatives, and they just can't make a decision. They get paralyzed. So they don't make hasty decisions, but on the other side, sometimes they don't make any decisions, and they waste a whole lot of time and resources, and then they end up paralyzed because they just can't make the decision that they need to make. And so reflective, just spending too much time thinking. And so reflective, no time thinking, go on your gut, be decisive, quick decision. Reflective, want to rely on your mind and come up with a good logical way of handling it. And so you try to gather as much information as you can, and sometimes that paralyzes you. You just can't make a decision off of it. And so the kind of the in between is consistent. And consistent means, well, they don't rush into a decision, but then also they don't waste time. They get information, and they get more information than the reflexive person, and relying on the reflexive, but they know there's kind of, okay, I got enough information, I can make it a good sound decision. I don't need to keep researching and keep doing more research, and eventually the situation passes us by because we took too long to make the decision. So we get more information, and this consistent decision maker gets more information and then makes a move. Speed with information. That's kind of what the consistent decision maker does, and that's important. They boast the best decision making record. Is those individuals that do get that more information, but then also know that speed is of an essence, and they got to make a decision fairly quickly. Okay, so think about what type of decision maker are you, as far as which approach do you take? Are you one of those that rely on your gut and go with it and make that quick decision, or are you ones that kind of like to get as much information as you can, and sometimes that paralyzes you, or are you kind of that balancing act? Well, yeah, I understand that there's a situation that we need to make a decision on. I want to get information, don't want to rush into it, but I know that time is important. Okay, so ideally that's the one you want to be, that consistent decision making, and use that decision making approach. One of the things we oftentimes have a challenge to do is, and this kind of also plays a part in that last one as far as approaches that we take, is how much, as a leader and a person that's making decisions, how much do we include the employees in the decision-making process? And we talk, you talk about that in leadership class, and a little bit more in administration. But the thing to keep in mind is that when we do these and include employees, that's good, and it has its good aspects, but then it also has its negative side. And so the good thing with the group decision making is it increases creativity. One mind is better than, or I mean, a whole lot of minds are better than one, and so you're going to come up with more creative alternatives for that solution to that issue or problem, or how you're going to reach your objectives, right? They also have a tendency to make better decisions because, again, you get pros and cons from all these different people. You get input from all these people, and so usually the decisions are sounder. They get a better understanding because they're involved in the decision-making process, so they internalize why you're making the decision that you are. So a lot of times when decisions are made from the top down and they trickle down to you, by the time they get to you in the front line or that direct leader, you have no idea why that decision was made. You don't know the significance of that decision, and somebody oftentimes is telling you what to do, and you don't see the significance of it. Well, when you're involved in the decision making, you get a better understanding of why it is, and then you can internalize why it's important, and you're more likely to follow it if you're a part of it, right? And then also improve morale and motivation. You're a part of decision making. You're empowered by being a part of the decision making, so that boosts up morale. It helps to increase motivation. Again, when you're included in the problem solving, you know what the objectives are. You know what you're trying to basically accomplish, and what do? You're more likely to work towards that and strive towards that and see the significance of it. So there's better morale and motivation. The one downside is that it takes a long time. A lot of times when you work with groups, there's going to be time for that group to even function. A lot of times there's that, we talk about a group dynamics in leadership. You have to work your way kind of through that group dynamics, feel comfortable around each other before you can even start being productive towards getting answers to those problems. And so that exists. So it takes time. So on the good side, with being an individual and you're making decisions as an individual, it's a lot faster. The downside is there's only one mind. There's only one point of view. There's nobody there to kind of bounce it off of, and you get that extra input and that extra creativity to help you make that decision. And so as you go through, you're going to be doing a lot of balancing with, all right, how am I going to make the decision? What approach am I going to take, and what style, like we talked about earlier, and then what approach am I going to use, and am I going to use group versus individual, and what environment am I working in? Is it going to be something, whether there's a risk there, or is it something that there's that certainty or uncertainty involved? And so we have to look at all those play a part in the decision making. And as we move forward into next week and talking about decision making, we'll talk about how these three and different elements play a part in decision making, and you'll see that they all kind of work together. So in the next week, some things to be keeping in mind. We're going to continue talking about decision making, obviously. We're going to talk about some ethical decision making strategies, talk about issue contingent, we'll talk about practice-based decision making, and then we'll look at a problem-solving model. We've probably saw the problem-solving model in leadership, and so kind of review some of that and go a little bit more in depth in some of that and talk about how these different approaches and styles and environments all work together to help us make those good sound decisions. And then and so that's kind of what we'll be working through next week, is talking about these different strategies. As we go through, then you'll be incorporating these into your case studies in helping you make decisions in those case studies that you'll have, and kind of looking at what strategy works well for you, and how you went through the process to make those decisions. So I'm going to stop here for the day, or for this lesson, and you watch this video and make sure you do your reading on this topic. Quiz is going to be coming available as well. That'll have to be finished up by the 15th at 5 o'clock. So hope all's well, and